and got back on the bus. What the heck was going on? I had no idea. Oh, that's good. I had no idea. Yeah. A face for radio. So I ended up getting back on the bus right away, and I didn't know what it was that had happened. And I said, when are we going to the pond? Well, you don't say that to a bunch of kids that were just at the pond, and you're the only idiot that didn't feel like you went to the pond. I got slapped around, pushed, a few punches, dummy, jerk. I had no idea what happened. So I got home that night with my little bag lunch, put it on the counter. My mother said, why didn't you eat your lunch? I didn't know how to tell her that. I didn't feel like time had passed. It's like, I don't know. And I left it there. She said, well, go play. I'll call you for dinner. Went outside to the empty lot next to the house. And at the empty lot next to the house, I remember suddenly collapsing and having convulsions. And a seizure occurred in which I was slamming my head on the sand and seeing little ants crawling around and thinking, not that I'm scared something's happening to me, but that, look at those little ants. I'm going to hit them with my forehead. Oh, look at those little things. I was like detached. I wasn't in there. So anyway, they called an ambulance. They took me to the hospital, and the doctor said, well, I know what's wrong. He got a concussion. He hit his head, see? Yeah, that was what was caused by the seizure, okay? And they had the worst part of it was them digging out the sand out of my forehead with tweezers. No, then they're rubbing it. It's like, ow, it's like a burn, right? Rub a burn, that's exciting. So they're pulling them out. That took an hour, and I hated that part. I just wanted to get out of there. So I came home. It never happened again to this day, all right? So, but a few days after that happened, I remember going outside, and for like the very first time, I started looking up. And I was like, yeah, I know those are stars. What the heck are stars? What are they made of? I mean, we're on a planet around a star. I knew that from elementary stuff that we were taught. I thought, wow, with the stars up there in the sky, I wonder if there's more planets up there. There's got to be. So I went in the house. And I remember saying to my mom, Ma, can you buy me a telescope? And thus it began. I had that telescope out every night, winter, spring, summer, or fall, aimed at the sky, aimed at the moon, and not aimed at the neighbor's windows. I was just not that guy, that actually didn't even interest me. I was like, I want to know about this. So I looked at these stars. I found double stars, stars that were orange with a blue one right next to it. Look at that. That star I learned was called Albireo. It's in the constellation Cygnus. He knows, okay? And it was a beautiful double star. It's a visual double, meaning that they're not really orbiting each other, as it turns out. They just happen to be a line of sight double star. One's a little closer than the other. And that was exciting, because I never knew the universe had that many colors until I looked at it. Now with your eye, when you look in a telescope at like a nebula, it always looks black and white to your eye, because your eye is only sensitive to green light at the highest frequency that it can receive first. All right? And then the other light is too soft and too subtle for you to see, but you can see it on photographs. So I take lots of photographs of these things in our SkyTour live stream observatories. We did the other night. Last night we had a session over in Endeavor. Some of you were there, okay? Oh, you like that? It was fun, wasn't it? Yeah, and if you miss any of our talks, you can see them on our YouTube channel. They're all free. I don't charge for this. Why would I charge for this? I want everybody to learn it and enjoy it, So I started with that little small telescope. It was called a 2.4-inch refractor, little lens, tube. Okay, I treasured that telescope. I even made a new mount for it. I made little boxes, put all my eyepieces in them, because I took pride in my equipment. Okay, so then what I ended up doing was I ended up deciding I was going to go to school for astronomy. Right then and there, I said, I'm going to become an astronomer. I'm going to find life in the universe if I can. I'm going to explore it. I'm going to learn how it happens. I'm going to figure out how life in the universe happened, because here we are on this planet. And as a kid, by then I was like 10 or 11, I was saying, there has to be something to do with the chemicals in our body. Where did those come from? So I went to the library on my bicycle to Mrs. Brown, the librarian in Plainville, Connecticut, where I come from. And Mrs. Brown said to me, "Hello, Marky." I hated that nickname, but whatever. "How are you, Marky?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Brown. Hey, can I go to the grown-up section?" Because I had read every kid's book, and I felt they were just too simple for me. Now, I was reading at a high school level in 3rd grade, okay? I know, it sounds great, right? But it caught up to me, and now I'm normal like everybody else. But I had that for a while, so I ended up begging Mrs. Brown to let me go up to the grown-up section, and I did. And I took out books on advanced chemistry and books on astronomy and physics at the time. And she said, "Marky, you going to be able to read those?" And I said, "I don't know, Mrs. Brown, but I'm going to give it a try." And they were very heavy books. These were textbooks. So I stuck them in a bag that my mom gave me, slung it over my shoulder, and then went home on the bike, kind of falling over a little bit because that's the side the books were hanging from, so I had to lean. It was really hard to drive it, to get home. I dug through the books. I learned some elementary chemistry. I learned about the hydrogen atom. I learned about the helium atom. And then I started encountering something called nucleosynthesis or whatever, and it was actually nucleosynthesis, the way other elements are formed in stars. And then I read a quote which I've never forgotten. "Everything we're made of was once made in the heart of a star." What? I can't put my finger in a candle. No, but the elements that you're made of were made inside a star at hundreds of millions of degrees Celsius. Wow. Everything we're made of. The chair, the carpets, everything was made in the heart of a star. All the atoms. And that intrigued me. So I started studying chemistry. I started studying more astronomy. I started studying physics to the level I could. And that took me down that path to go into further explorations in astronomy. So I guess I started buying cameras. In fact, my first camera I made out of cardboard. Right, a pinhole camera, right? You're familiar? And I took that pinhole camera and attached it to my 2.4 telescope, and it had an Instamatic film canister in there. Okay, remember the Instamatic cameras? Yeah? Now they're like throwaways. Well, the Instamatic camera, I took that film canister, I put it on my telescope, used black electrical tape to hold it on. Couldn't really see what it saw because it was a rangefinder. When you look through the rangefinder, you would see what you see, but the camera sees something different. So I had no idea what it could see, right? Because I only had the film canister. I didn't have anything else. I built the rest of it out of cardboard. And I took pictures. They were terrible, okay? But I saw this sort of whitish, kind of half oval thing, and that was the moon. It wasn't in focus, but it was great. The first photo I ever took was absolutely horrific, not good at all. And of course, that led me down the path of saying, I want a better camera. I want to figure out how to adapt a camera to my telescope. So I built a cardboard barrel for a real camera, and I actually got some okay photos. I was an astronomer now. I was 12. Yep. Now, it always rang true to me that you didn't have to have a PhD in astronomy to be able to do astronomy. Clyde Tombaugh, who I knew, found Pluto. And I sat with Clyde on a grassy knoll in Vermont, and he was going to speak at an astronomy conference, and I was sitting there with him, and I said, "Clyde, how long did you study astronomy?" He goes, I never did. I was just a guy working with enthusiasm, a helper. And I did a task that was to look at photos taken of the night sky, then look at other photos taken of the same spot in the night sky, blink them back and forth fast to see any differences between them. And that's how I found Pluto. It's called a blink comparator. I made one when I was a kid because I wanted to see if things changed in the sky. So I was particularly interested in what we could do to actually do that. And now, with our SkyTour Livestream telescope, we have an app on our phones. We can actually do research now with our data. We've got years of data that we acquired, and we can look at every single image, say, of the Pleiades that we've ever taken, and blink them all and see what's different. Well, guess what? I didn't know if we'd find anything, But we did. We found stars that have vanished. We found asteroids that weren't seen before and tracked. This is cool stuff. And this is worldwide. All of our data is available to everybody for free, and they can do this themselves. So everybody can be an amateur scientist. That's how I look at it. So I know this is a long preamble, but it really isn't. It really belongs in this talk because we're talking about life in the universe. And to look for life in the universe, we've got to first understand how life happened here. And we're going to do that, okay, at the end, because that's where I do it, because it's kind of fun that way. I don't have an automatic clicker, so I got to do this. One of the things that we wanted to do was to see if there's life other than us. That's the age-old question, isn't it? Are we alone? So that's why we're looking for planets around other stars.
How do we know it's aliens? Couldn't that just be military aircraft? They now believe there's one planet for every star in the universe. There are already 8.4 billion artificial intelligence systems. Who could have built that 10,000 years ago? Where did you find the source for that? Could AI truly become sentient?
For a unique, in-depth, and rational look at these topics with the world's leading experts, check out Beyond Contact on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Find us at contactinthedesert.com.